Welcome, everyone, to the new year 2026. And of course, we have another episode of the Ship Safely podcast. I'm Sebastian, your host. And today we're joined by Anam Ansari, who's the blockchain engineering lead at TREPA, which is redefining precision prediction on Solana. Anam has a pretty outstanding background that she's been building in the Solana ecosystem for over 3 years now, and she's been a developer at Helios and an intern at the Solana Foundation. And while she was a student, she was named one of the Major League Hacking's top 50, which is a yearly honor given to standout student builders and hackers around the world. She's been active in helping new developers break into Solana by mentoring and community work. So that's fantastic. And now she's leading blockchain engineering at TREPA, which is helping shape a new approach to decentralized forecasting. Anam, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Sebastian. Thank you for having me. I'm quite excited about this podcast and thanks for the great introduction, by the way.
Yeah, of course. You have a very cool background. To kick things off, something I like to ask every guest on this podcast, what do you hope people will take away from this conversation and why should they stick around and listen?
Well, if you stick around till the end, I can share some secrets sauce about trading on like prediction markets or TREPA. You get all these advantages while trading. But yeah, of course, I'm kidding about that. I mostly will be geeking about the engineering side of things related to security, of how we built our smart contracts. So that's something that you could look out for.
Awesome, awesome. You got into tech and eventually into Web3, so would be really interested in learning a bit about this journey. Can you tell us more?
Of course. So I actually got into tech quite early, and that was in my second year of undergrad, and it happened to be in Web3. So I was selected for a fellowship program where I interned at Hubble Protocol. And this was my first real experience with Rust and on-chain programs. And it was a very fun, steep learning curve as well. And after that, a bit of a turning point for me was visiting the Solana Hacker House in Delhi and being surrounded by builders who were shipping these real world products completely changed my perspective about the whole Web3 ecosystem, the Solana ecosystem, and it made me feel that this is something tangible and not just experimental. And I started to see the scale of opportunity Web3 or the Solana community offered. And shortly, a while after that, during the Grizzlython hackathon, it's one of the biggest hackathons, which happens, I guess, quarterly every year by Solana. And me and my team, we built an Android SDK, mobile SDK for Solana, and we ended up getting the fifth prize in the mobile track. This project, of course, later um, evolved through grants, and we open sourced the SDKs in Kotlin, Flutter, and React Native. Since then, I've worked across 6 to 7 freelance projects across the Solana stack with a strong focus on on-chain contracts and protocol design. I also briefly interned at Solana Foundation as a DevRel intern. And finally, in my last year of undergrad, I joined Helios as a DevX engineer, where I work closely with developers and infrastructure tooling. Eventually, I wanted to take like bigger ownership and harder problems to solve, which led me to TREPA, and that's where I lead decentralized efforts now. So yeah,
Oh,
it's been quite a journey now.
quite a journey, yeah. I didn't even know about Hubble protocol. That's very,
Yeah,
or OG, early days. Yeah.
it is.
Um, that's awesome. And TREPA is described as this precision prediction platform. What does that,
Mhm,
actually mean? And how is it different from
mhm.
other traditional prediction markets?
So, at a high level, TREPA is creating a new primitive for predictions. When we say precision prediction, we mean that users are able to predict on real world numerical outcomes, things like crypto, sports scores, GDP figures, or even election margins. And instead of asking like a yes or no question, we ask like, what do you think the number will be? And the key idea is simple. The closer you are to the prediction or the actual outcome, the more you earn. And traditional prediction markets are usually binary. So you're betting yes or no, above, below, win or lose. And that works well for the outcomes which are actually binary in nature, but it breaks when you have to predict something with real numbers that exist on a broader spectrum instead of something like yes or no. And to give you an example, if I ask you what will be the Solana's price tomorrow, and this is not a binary in nature, you could have a question like, will Sol be about 130? But it doesn't actually let you predict the real number. So if someone believes it's 129 and predicts no, and somebody who believes it's going to be higher, 150, and predicts yes, and and it ends up being what 131, the person who predicted yes wins, even though their assumption or their conviction was totally very far from the actual truth, right? So this is something that we are trying to build is your predictions are evaluated on how close they are to this outcome, and your payouts of course scale with accuracy. We have a lot of, we have a we you get bigger ROIs if there's a larger chance of outcomes that you can have. So the system rewards you for being right and not just being on the right side of an arbitrary cutoff. So that's what we mean by precision prediction, and it's a new primitive that we're trying to create.
Yeah. This reminds me about this game show, which was called something like Guess the Right Price,
Yes,
where people were like five people, or I don't know how many were being asked like, how much does this cost, right? And the one that was closest to the actual price was the winner, right? Something like that. But then you
yes.
actually reward everyone, but they get a smaller reward if they were further away from
Hmm.
the actual price. Okay, that's really cool.
Yes.
Now, as you've described Trepa so passionately, I feel like my next question is probably going to be an obvious one. But what drew you to joining Trepa, and what made this project stand out to you?
So I met TREPA's co-founder Jong earlier this year at Network School Malaysia. So at that time, I was also figuring out what projects to work with. I was actually doing a lot of freelance projects at that time, and I had a talk with him. And the idea of precision predictions were very intriguing to me because it's a very deceptively simple concept, but technically and economically, it's a very hard problem to solve because you're comparing everyone's prediction and relating them to how accurate you were. And finally, what really sold me about the project was seeing the idea being actually tested in real life. Jong, he set up a prediction, like a small prediction outcome where you predict the gym's attendance at network school, and people were actually willing to pay. They actually paid in cash or crypto, and then he had this Google sheet where he tracked all the predictions and calculated the payouts. And that's where I realized that accuracy is something that people are willing to bet on rather than binary outcomes. So, as I was doing a lot of freelance projects, I initially also got involved with TREPA to help them think through their decentralization strategy and the on chain design. But the combination of the strong idea that they have and the clear demand I saw, and even the team, which is a very solid team, made it an easy decision to go deeper and join full time as the blockchain engineering lead. And since then, in a span of 3 months, we built a new protocol from scratch. We did audits, we did testing on both stage and production, and we finally launched mainnet in December.
Nice. Big congrats. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. I can understand that. I know Young for a
Yes.
few years now, and I've met the rest of your team at Breakpoint. Very cool team you have there. So I realize what drew you in there. Um, Now, to go on to a second part of our set of questions, you've chosen to build on Solana. Can you
Mhm.
tell us what makes Solana a good fit for Trepa?
Solana has the perfect cultural fit where it's a place where new primitives emerge. And from a technical point, it has the speed, the cost efficiency, and it's a very nice experimental ground for our innovative payout mechanism. And since TREPA, like other consumer applications, is a very interaction heavy app where you create predictions, update them, resolve polls, claim your rewards, and these could happen in a short window of time. So we need to leverage the low latency and the high throughput that we get from Solana, right? And it makes it feel very near instant for users. And second is the low transaction cost, like compared to other chains, you don't have to pay so much for these small interactions. And from a reliability perspective, Solana has been battle tested for so long, and we didn't even know that Fire Dancer was live for past few months. And that is something which is really nice that we feel that we should build on Solana. It has supported the highest on-chain volumes in crypto across DeFi, NFTs, and consumer apps, and that gives us like the confidence that Solana has the ability to for real world load and not just how do I say it, theoretical throughput.
Yeah, definitely. Feel like for your use case, it's definitely a very good chain. Prediction accuracy is at the core of TREPA, like you've said already a couple of times. How do you think about
Mhm.
designing the smart contracts and the, interactions that reward precision?
Yes, so prediction accuracy is core to TREPA. And when we think about designing the contract, the first thing that we make sure is numerical correctness, because the payout actually depends on how far you are or how closer you are to the true value. And any small errors or can become like a fairness issue. So we have few principles that guide us. One is like right numerical representation end to end. So we're not dealing with binary outcomes, we're not minting any token positions, we're actually storing real world numbers, estimates, and that's where we use like fixed point representation, like scaled integers rather than floats. And this is done on both client and program side. So so even the scaling and encoding, everything is done in fixed point representation. We also have a very explicit rounding policy. We make it so it's consistent everywhere. Precision markets can fall very quietly if there's some rounding differences between the front end and the back end and even the on-chain logic. So we define exactly where the rounding happens, how it happens, like if we floor it down, floor it up, and we test it across edge cases. So yeah, definitely how the numerical calculations, all the arithmetic operations are tested well, and we make sure that the data structure and rounding is consistent across stacks.
Very cool. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of
Hmm.
precision involved in designing
Hmm.
as
Yes.
well. Pun intended. Um, what's one technical or maybe even like a product decision that your team made early on that you think really shaped the direction in which Trepa is now going?
So when I joined, we had a beta V1 on chain, and that's something we decided that we need to make sure that we rebuild a new version 2 instead of iterating over the old version 1. Like the beta V1 helped us a lot to validate the idea. But when we looked seriously in terms of scaling, we realized that we had to redesign it with cost, security, and even operability in mind from day one, so it's easier for us to upgrade, for us to plug in new features. So from a contract perspective, we optimize the rent and the account layout. Since Trepa is a consumer facing app, we sponsor the transaction and rent fees for the users. And that's why we need to be very extremely deliberate about account sizes, the state modeling, and how much on-chain data we actually end up persisting. So that single decision helped how economical it is for us to support large number of users without pushing extra cost onto them. And the second biggest decision was cultural rather than purely technical. We chose to prioritize security and correctness over having multiple features or feature velocity. So instead of shipping many features quickly with minimal testing, we invested early in rigorous testing. We had our beta, we had internal reviews and audits. Of course, you know that we did our audits. Uh, Even after extensive testing on staging and going through the external audit, we still ran an internal mainnet test assertively, uh, so that we can see the protocol in production like environment. And almost every time we uncovered issues that wouldn't have surfaced in just like an isolated test setup. And that practice really struck with the team, and it shapes how we ship today, how new features that will be coming out soon.
Okay. I think with that, you pretty much answered my next question, but I'll just ask it in case you want to add anything to it. How does
Mhm.
your, team think about smart contract safety and risk, and if there's any particular tools or practices that you rely on to ship safely?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I've already talked about how rigorous we are with the stages of testing we have, like staging, DevNet, production, and then also on internal mainnet. And apart from that, we treat safety as a correctness problem first and a security problem second, especially because TREPA's payout depend on numerical accuracy. So we rely heavily on integration tests. We that can exercise the full client to contract flow. So because mismatches between the on-chain and off-chain logic are where the subtle bugs tend to hide. And from an operational standpoint, we use multi-sig controlled treasuries and strict authority separation. So no single key can move funds or update critical components. And I think beyond testing tools, we lean a lot on real usage, internal minute testing, and dog fooding the product ourselves. And yeah, I think I've answered a lot about the testing and accuracy culture that we follow here.
Yeah, definitely, definitely love it.
Mm.
Love to see, teams taking safety and security really seriously, not just playing around. My next question is about, scaling. What do you
Mhm.
think the main challenges to scaling will be as more users join TREPA?
Okay, so from a technical standpoint, we're actually really in a good place to support a larger user base. We've designed the system for a higher usage, so it doesn't meaningfully impact our landing rates or even force us to bear a lot of transaction cost, because that comes from a very deliberate account layouts and closing of old accounts and looking into how often users touch the change. But definitely, from a user perspective, scale means more diverse behavior, more edge cases that get discovered every day, and a very stronger feedback loop. So, as more people use the product, expectations rise quickly around UX, clarity, the predictability of any outcome. And that means that we really have to adapt based on real user feedback and also be very careful while rushing features that could compromise correctness or trust. So yeah, I think security risk could be it isn't related to scaling or volume, but it's evolution. So as we add new features and expand functionality, upgrades become unavoidable. So each upgrade increases the surface area that we need to test, and it introduces new assumptions. So we need to treat like all upgrades very deliberately, even when features are already implemented or partially scoped. We don't rush them to production without extensive testing and review. So, what tends to get harder over time is maintaining the same security bar, which we did with the first launch that we did. So, we need to make sure that as the system becomes complex, we keep the standards same and we rely on layered testing, which is local staging, audit feedback, and then internal mainnet behavior before we roll out anything broadly. So, yeah, overall, I think scaling isn't about what the chain can handle. It's more about how to grow the product without eroding safety and user trust.
I'm right.
Mhm.
This is, like you're talking like someone who's built dozens of these projects already, because um I don't know if you've seen Felix, the CTO of Asymmetric. He gave a talk at Breakpoint, and
Mhm.
this was one of
I
his,
think I missed that. Yeah.
core slides. It was like, you have this nice pipeline when a project builds something, or you build, you test, you do the audit, and
Mm-hmm.
then after some time, there's one small change that you just do. It's not a big deal. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to audit it. And just ship it, and
Yes.
then there's a problem, right? And hearing you say that, and realizing that that's a problem is very mature. I think like shows like the kind of class of the TREPA team, and the kind of things that they're thinking
Mm.
about. So big kudos to you guys for that one. Um,
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So even our CTO Leon, he's very specific on the features because like from in a startup culture you feel like okay we can ship this in 2 days 3 days, but that's not how production works. You need to actually think it through that if I ship this, how am I testing everything? Because it's not some like from where I came from, I used to ship things over the weekend because that's the culture I had in my mind. But when you actually start shipping to production, you need to be very sure that what you're
Yeah,
pushing from a security perspective is well tested, even small feature updates.
yeah, definitely. Love it. So that
Mhm.
brings us to the rapid fire closeout. Are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Wh- What's one thing about smart contract design that still gets overlooked?
um, I would say state and cost. Teams optimize heavily on compute units, but they forget the cost that they might push onto the users. So, yeah, you need. I mean, I know Solana is very cheap right now, but as you scale, you're gonna realize that state and cost matters a lot.
Totally, totally love it. Second question. What's one project or tool in the Solana ecosystem that you're excited about right now?
As a developer, I'm really excited about everything which is happening around SVM tooling, like the XTX project and like the infra where you could make debugging simulations and program introspection easier. So it's a very big unlock for safe and more mature on-chain apps. So yeah, I'm very excited about the developer toolings that are coming out.
Oh God, yeah, that's so important, I feel. The third question
Mhm.
comes from our previous guest, and he asked
Okay.
if you could have a magic wand and change one thing
hmm
in the crypto industry, what would it be?
hmm so since I've been in the ecosystem, like Solana ecosystem for 3 years, I would say that I would change the crypto jargon that we have and actually focus on explaining system much in plain language and explain it in like how you'd explain any serious financial or technical product instead of saying, okay, we're AI powered blockchain, this and that and this. So
Yes, definitely. That's so cool. Would you like to leave a question for our next guest?
okay. Um Maybe like what's the one thing about Solana which looks definitely wrong on paper, but actually works surprisingly well in practice?
Oh, man, that's a very good one. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
And with that, we're gonna wrap this up. Thanks so much for being on this episode, Anam. And please tell our listeners where they can learn more about you and Trepa, and where they can message you and talk to you.
I mean, I will definitely like everyone to use our app. So if you just go to trepa.app, you can actually use it and give us any feedback that we could have. And if you want to reach out to me or the team, then we are on Twitter. You could reach out to me at Anam Ansari 062 and Trepa's handle, which is trepa_io. So yeah, definitely would love to talk with anyone who's into prediction markets and wants to learn more about TREPA or how we work internally or any feedback that you could give us.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. Go ahead and reach out to Anam and the team. Thanks again, Anam, for being on this episode, and ship safely.
Yes, thank you for having me, sir.
Have a great one. Bye.
Yeah, bye.